Welcome to Football Today, team profiles and projections. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, with my co-host, Justin Penik. And today we are looking at the Buffalo Bills, who came in our power rankings at 7th after 11-6 season for them last year. Good numbers on the year, right? Offensively, 6th in points, 3rd in EPA. Defensively, 4th in points, 11th in EPA per play. This is Sean McDermott's 8th season. Boy, how time flies after being the Panthers DC. Joe Brady is technically his first year, but is obviously promoted last year once Ken Dorsey was fired from the QB coach. And then defensive coordinator Bobby Babbitt's first season as the DC, been their safety and their linebacker coach, was really promoted because he would have taken a DC job somewhere else. Justin, this team was 5-5. They fired Ken Dorsey. They finished 6-1 with the number 2 seed in the AFC. You can look at that and say, well, they actually scored like 7 more points per game with Ken Dorsey versus not. But there was a better flow for that offense, better sequencing. The defense also played a little better in that time. They lost a lot of players, right? A lot, right? When we go through the loss list, it's going to be a lot. So the narrative, and I hate using the narrative word because people just use it for anything where they don't like. It's called a narrative. Anything I don't like is just a narrative. But the narrative around the team is like, oh, it may not be a great year because they lost so many guys. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, it's the narrative surrounding the Buffalo Bills is quite an interesting one, Bobby Skinner, where you had they were the hottest team in the NFL to finish the year. I believe they won 5 in a row to end the year, and then they were winners of 6 of their last 7, and the only loss that they had was overtime against the Philadelphia Eagles, where they 37-34 loss, so they still put up a lot of points. But Bobby, this is a Buffalo Bills team that I think is going through an identity change and kind of an identity twist. How much of an identity change will it be from taking off of Josh Allen's plate, especially if you want to talk about early downs? I think their early down pass frequency is going to go down. I think it did go down under Joe Brady. Stephon Diggs leaves. You sign Dawson Knox to a contract extension, so you have more of a two-headed monster at tight end versus the Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs combo at receiver, the emergence of James Cook. So it's going to be really interesting to see as if they change to more of a 12 personnel, 2 tight end team, maybe running the ball more on early downs versus putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands as much as possible, right? So interested to see where the identity of this football team goes, and then the results that we get from that in terms of wins and losses.
I just think they're going to be a better team. I really do. Like you look at the loss category and you see some big names, but a lot of these guys were starting to age out or had injury issues. Now, the thing that worries me the most is they lost Matt Milano to injury and camp, right?
Yeah, already.
That worries me with this team. But I just look at the losses and how they've worked to replace them, and I'm really confident. Like I'm really confident in this offense, right? Number one, I think Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the NFL to Patrick Mahomes, right? When you have that, I feel confident that you're going to be all right. But this team did change their identity when they moved to Joe Brady, right? Like, and this wasn't all, the switch from Joe Brady, but it was a part Joe Brady. Like, you look at Stephon Diggs splits, right? They stopped forcing the ball to Stephon Diggs halfway through the season. When you include the playoffs, which I guess this basically is the Joe Brady split, there's 10 games versus 9 games. For the first 10 games, he had 868 yards. The last 9, 388. 73 catches versus a 44. 7 touchdowns to 1 touchdown. 71 catch rate to 58 catch rate. 10 targets to game to 8 targets per game. It made sense to now. Here's where it didn't make sense to move off Diggs. You're taking the $31 million cap hit this year, but he's 31 years old. But to me, it made sense. They were exhausted with dealing with Stephon Diggs every single year. Didn't report on time, and he, let's call it what it is. He choked in the Chiefs game. He had 2 big drops in that Chiefs playoff game. right? Doesn't drop those passes, and we may be talking about the Buffalo Bills as Super Bowl champions. I like what they've done to replace him. And I just think Josh Allen and James Cook in this run game is going to steady the ship a bit. I have splits of, the run game with and without Brady as the OC. I just, Keon Coleman, I think he's going to be a really good ball winner for Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen, let's think about what Josh Allen did with Gabe Davis. I think he can do a lot more with Keon Coleman. I think Dalton Kincaid is going to take a huge step up, and he already had a good rookie year. I think Curtis Samuel's a great fit for this, and his best year was under
Great
Joe
fit.
Brady. And then James Cook, I I think he can be top 5 in rushing this year.
Yeah, for me, man, it's just a question of this is a team that is still super, super ultra reliant on Josh Allen.
Oh no.
Which is right, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that with a bad undertone under my breath, but I think they are a team that wants to move away from being Josh Allen dependent, which I think could bite them in the ass, if that makes sense. If you're taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands on early downs and you're giving it to James Cook a little bit more, like I don't know. I think it's good and it sounds good all in theory. But if they move the team away from solely relying on Josh Allen and his legs and his arm, that's where, and McDermott has gotten more conservative as time goes on. The longer that a guy like Brian Dable has been away from Buffalo, that's where questions come up with the Bills. It's not me saying that they're going to be bad. It's just that I have questions when you take the ball out of the hands of the best player on your
Sure,
team,
but they're
which
not,
I think that they want to do.
They're not Jim Harbaugh in this offense either, right? Like I have the splits for James Cook last year with Dorsey and then with Joe Brady. He had almost 5 more carries per game, right? Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a good chunk. It goes from 12 carries per game to 16.7. He did end the season 4th in rushing in the NFL. His 7 games with, so the games with Brady versus the games with Dorsey, 72.5 rushing yards per game versus 61.4. 31.2 receiving yards per game versus 22. So essentially 21 more scrimmage yards per game on the more touches that he was getting. You also, Josh Allen has over 2,000 rushing yards and 28 touchdowns on the ground over the last 3 years. So you have that. They offensive line stayed intact outside of, Mitch Morse leaving, and they're going to bring in, David Edwards has started a lot of games, who's going to go to guard McGovern in the center. And again, yeah, do they have the Stephon Diggs number 1? Absolutely not. Does it make them a worse off? Does losing him help them? No, it doesn't. But I like Keon Coleman for Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen can use him really well. I think he can be someone who can hit the ground running right away. Curtis Samuel, again, we talked about he did have his best season under Joe Brady, but it wasn't just like one outlier year. I mean, he had 843 and 652 scrimmage yards the last 2 years on a team that had Terry McLaurin, and with a bad offense and a bad offensive line,
bad offensive infrastructure. Yeah.
So Curtis Samuel has done that. Dalton Kincaid, I'm expecting a big year 2 jump for him, but he also had 73 catches for 670 yards as a rookie and year 1 as a tight end, right? Like if it wasn't for Sam,
he finished the year.
If it wasn't for Sam Laporta, we'd be talking a lot more about Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, and he finished the year with a much higher average depth of target than to start the year too. And he struggled with some injuries throughout the year. I think Dawson Knox struggled with some injuries throughout the year too. So you didn't really get a chance to see Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid really healthy for a long period of time for Joe Brady to really utilize and use. So that's what I'm more excited. I know people talk about the receivers. They extended Dawson Knox. They gave him a 3-year contract extension while taking Dalton Kincaid in the first round, right, Bobby? They took him in the first round. So they clearly have a vision to use 2 tight ends, and if they're healthy at the same time. And where I hope that lies, that you're going to see the improvement within 12 personnel in the running game. And I really hope that they start to use play action more, because Joe Brady, I believe the Bills use play action on only 29% of early down dropbacks, which ranked number 20th in the NFL. But if you look at the early down splits of Josh Allen with play action, without play action, 52% success rate with play action, 47% success rate without, 10.2 yards per attempt with play action, 6.9 without, and an almost a 0.2 EPA per attempt difference with play action, without play action. So I think this is a team, 12 personnel, play action, James Cook, Let Josh Allen throw a little bit more, but you also have the threat of the running game too. You have the threat of James Cook being an explosive runner as well. Really kind of live on 12 personnel on early downs, and I think that could be a formula as to how this team can avoid third down. Utilize play action more, and if Josh Allen is efficient out of it, use it more. Don't be number 20th in the NFL in early down play action passing rate.
Yeah, and if like they use James Cook in the receiving game as well too. Like I think that running game is going to be really good this year. So you have a running game that's, and again, it's not like it wasn't good last year. James Cook was 4th in the NFL in rushing last year.
Very
You
explosive.
they're a team that doesn't really split reps very much now. Ray Davis is their backup, the draft pick out of Kentucky. They got Ty Johnson. So he's going to get a lot of touches, but like James Cook was 4th in the NFL in rushing last year. So, you already have like a good rushing attack. The offensive line has stayed intact. You have an offensive coordinator who's done a good job with the run game. And then, I mean, Lamar Jackson's the best running QB in the NFL. Who's the second best?
It's Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's Josh Allen. I'm not crowning Jaden Daniels that until I could see him take, 5 hits in a game. Like 28 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 years. Like I should have looked up the numbers, but that's probably better than every back not named Christian McCaffrey in that time, and over 2,000 rushing yards.
Maybe Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, maybe Jalen Hurts as well.
But they cheat because they do the tush push.
Yeah. Like I think Josh Allen's a better runner than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is really good.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm really confident in this team. And now here's the thing with Allen is, do the interception talking points by talking heads, are they a little over the top? Yes. Right. And then people go into, defend Josh Allen, right? Like, well, guess what? He's 3rd in e-pay per play every year, and he does so much, right? You guys focus on just the negatives. I agree. And this happened on national TV games, right? So it gets even magnified a little more. But he does need, I hate to say this because he's the second best QB in the NFL right now. But Patrick Mahomes has done a great job of protecting the balls the way teams have started to play him. You would like him to be slightly better in the turnover department, right? Like in week 1 starters, and it was a hard time finding this on Pro Football Reference because they don't table anything. So it's like including receivers. For week 1 starter interception rate, he had the 5th highest last year, 14th highest year before, 15th highest. Turnover worthy play rate, which I don't love, 13th highest last year, 3rd highest year before, and then 13th the year before that. So I'd like him to be in the top half when it comes to protecting the football. Not expecting him to be total ball control, never, 4 interception type season, but I would like him to be top half in that instead of bottom half, which he's been the last 3 years.
So what do you think that looks like with the Bills particular? Do you think that involves in reducing average depth of target? I do think increasing play action rate can even help that too, create a little bit more space. He had an 8.7 intended air yards per pass, which is high.
Part of it was forcing it to Stephon Diggs. That was a part of it.
Okay.
Right. And there were some games last year where it's like, because Josh Allen will have a few games where it's like, man, we could have maybe won this game if you played better. Where there's like, this guy is legitimately wide ass open. He is part of the progression, and you are trying to force this ball into Stephon Diggs, who they're keyed in on. Just like, so you can't have those type of games, right? You can't blame Ken Dorsey for that type of stuff. And so the thing is, though, where I'm a little skeptical because like, oh, well, now you don't have to force feed Stephon Diggs to make him happy. Is Keon Coleman is not a natural separator. So you're going to have to you're not going to force feed Keon Coleman because you feel like you need to get him involved, but he's not going to be, beating, dusting guys. Like you're going to have to throw the ball up for him to let him make a play. And Allen's going to be willing to do it. You just hope that you don't get the interceptions that go with that type of throw.
Yeah, he was 3rd in the NFL in average intended air yards per pass attempt, which I saw 8.7 was high, and it was high, and it was tied with Hurts with 3rd, while Will Levis and C.J. Stroud were number 1 and number 2. I'll tell you what, this Bills receiving room has size, and what I can see the air yards per attempt staying high. Like Matt Collins is a pretty big dude.
He starts Keon Coleman's
Keon Coleman's is a big dude. Obviously, you have the tight ends. MVS is no, he's not around. Then they cut. No, is he around? I get my Chiefs and Packers receivers confused.
Yeah, he's still there. I mean,
Um,
we're recording this the day before cutdown day, but he is still there.
yeah, so they have MVS too. Um, so there's some size in this room, and also if you want to use tight ends vertically. So I'm interested to see what their offensive approach is. Do they want to cut down the air yards and maybe make more quicker reads, easier reads for Josh Allen, or do we still want to stretch the field with the personnel with what we got?
The
So
interesting tell, because Mac Hollins is someone you want to use a little more down the field. Mac Hollins might start. That is my biggest worry. Is like, who's that second outside guy? Because Khalil Shakir is a slot. Curtis Samuel's best used in the slot. Who's that second outside guy outside of Keon Coleman? I think the real decider is how are they going to use Dalton Kincaid? Because you can just turn him into Swole Beasley and use him as this power slot, or you could really try and get him to stretch it up the field. I mean, he can freaking move. I love Kincaid. Um, the interesting thing will be is like how do they use Kincaid? Is it all low average depth of target stuff, or are they trying to get him, more involved down the field?
right. Do you want to move to the? Do you have any thoughts on the offensive line, or do you
I
want
mean,
to move to the
it was really
defense?
good last year, right? It's not star studded. Deion Dawkins obviously highlights at left tackle, but they did well last year. And they've stayed intact outside of losing Mitch Morse.
If Warren Sharp does a positional unit rankings, him and his team, they have them. They have the Bills' offensive line ranked 22nd. Is that too low? I mean, obviously you're
I mean,
not
I
doing
have to
these
go
rankings
one by
yourself either.
one, but I don't think they have the 22nd offensive line in the NFL. I would
Okay.
thinking of like all the bad offensive lines around the football. I think they'd have a top half one.
Yeah. What do you think of Osiris Torrance heading into year two?
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that was dialed in for his rookie year, but I mean, I like Osiris Torrance. They've done a decent job developing guys. Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not dialed into Osiris Torrance and what to expect out of him and how he did as a rookie. What do you got on him?
No, I just know that guards usually typically struggle a little bit in year one, and I'm excited to see what he can do in year two because they started him last year and he played over 1,000 snaps, played almost every single snap at right guard. He'll be slotted to go in again and be part of an offensive line that needs to help out Allen, needs to help out James Cook. Want to move to the defense side of
Yeah,
the
let's
ball?
move to the defensive side of the ball. Bobby Babbitt, his first year as offense or defensive coordinator, was their safeties coach, then their linebackers coach, which he's done a great job with, by the way. With those units were great in all those years. Um, I wanted him as the New York Giants defensive coordinator after Denard Wilson from the Ravens. I, I think this. I feel better about this unit than I probably should with the losses that they've had. Now, here's the thing. I said in the beginning, losing Matt Milano sucks. It sucks
Yeah.
because I do really think it drops the ceiling on this defense quite. I mean, he's an all-pro linebacker. You know, a top five linebacker in the NFL, and he's just gone for the second year in a row. Now they lost Tyrell Dawson, so they're going to ask Dorian Williams to to start next to Terrell Bernard. Like Bernard, I really like next to Matt Milano. I don't know how I feel about this group as just Bernard and Dorian Williams next to each other. But I feel good
That's
about
a
the
good get
front.
for
I
them.
feel good about the back end. This defense did perform well last year. Like, their top two guys are returning in Ed Oliver and Gregory Rousseau, right? I mean, Ed
Yeah.
Oliver was fourth in total defensive tackle pressure last year. He's been really good for a long time. Gregory Rousseau was 27th in total pressure for edges, 24th in pass rush win rate. He's gotten rid of some of the stigma that was around him coming out of Miami. Like he's not one of the best in the league, but he's really good. And then what are you getting out of Von Miller? Because it was really bad last year. You have that big cap hit. There was a bad contract to sign. The Bills got really hungry and made a move that they probably knew they might regret in the long run. And it is, I mean, that contract's a big reason why they had to let some guys go.
The first depth chart that the Bills came out with, it's AJ Epineza and Gregory Rousseau as starters, and Von Miller's with the second
Yeah,
team.
I mean, I think that's the way it should be. And Epinesa, he's come a long way from what he was early on in his career.
He has, yeah.
Um, but that second end is going to be the fourth guy up front for them, right? Because Daquan Jones, maybe last year was an outlier. I know he missed a bunch of games, but I mean, he was fourth
Yeah,
in
I like him.
he was fourth in defensive tackle pass rush run rate. He's been a good player his whole career. Last year was like
Hmm.
his best season before he got injured, but he's also 32 years old. And then I even like their depth. If Austin Johnson, and then they drafted Dwayne Carter out of Duke, who I think can make some plays for them. I mean, Epinesa and Von Miller. You just got to hope Von Miller is something, because even Epinesa, I don't have the most trust in the world of him as a pass rusher. He'll be a good run defender for you, but this is a fine front. It's not competing to be one of the best fronts in the NFL, but this is a more than capable front.
Yeah, for sure. The back end with those linebackers are going to be so key though. But this is where Bobby Babbage comes in. Where Bobby, one of the main reasons why I like him so much, and we talked about this as our favorite team was looking for a defensive coordinator this offseason. Where what Babbage has done is develop football players. He's coached in multiple different spots. Wasn't he also in the secondary for a little bit
He was their
too?
safety. He was an assistant DB coach, a safety coach for 2 years, and he's been their linebacker coach for the last 2 years.
When you see the talent that they've been able to develop in the back end, and then especially at linebacker too. I mean, even last year, having guys step up after Matt Milano went down with a season-ending injury at one point last year too, and that's why it sucks to lose him 2 years in a row like that. But they had guys that did step up to the plate, and guys that have developed under his watch as a position coach. And that's the best way to tell if a guy is maybe qualified or not. Is you don't know a lot about these position coaches, but you can see if there's been player development under them. That's a reason to get excited about them getting a promotion like a defensive coordinator job. So I'm excited to see what he can do, and hopefully the Bills don't have the same injury luck that they had last year, where Matt Milano was out for the year. Tre'Davious White tore his Achilles week 4. Daquan Jones tore his pec muscle week 5. He missed the remainder of the season. Ed Oliver missed 3 games a stretch. Micah Hyde missed 2 games at one point. And then you had Von Miller, who was recovering from the ACL throughout last year. So guys missed a lot of time and a lot of games from them. And that was one of the reasons why that team last year with the Buffalo Bills was not as good as what maybe they could have been.
Yeah, and they still ended up being the number 2 seed, like while dealing with all that. And then secondary,
Right.
I feel pretty good. Like you lose Tre'Davious White, but he was injured all of last year essentially. Like Rasul Douglas was a really good trade for them. He only allowed 25 yards per game with the Bills, 52% completion rate. He gave up some big plays, but he also, had 4 interceptions. And I think this is a solid secondary, even though you lose you lose Tre'Davious White, and then your safeties of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. But you have Taron Johnson, who I think is the best run defending nickel in the NFL. Like he's just like another linebacker out there. He does his job pretty well. Um, and then opposite, like I know he's not the most popular guy in the world, but I think Christian Benford is someone you can feel decent enough starting as your cornerback too on this team. And then safety, I really like Cole Bishop, and he's a perfect fit for the Buffalo Bills, right? He's a perfect fit. He was their second round pick. He's exactly what they're looking for. Versatile, smart. I think he's going to come in and play and be good right away. The question is, what are you getting out of Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards with him? Because they're gonna use 3 at times. They run out of nickel all the time, so they'll put 3 on the field at times. What are you getting out of Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards is the question.
Yeah. I mean, they were still 7th in EPA per dropback last year, so you still have really good defensive coaching here. McDermott's going to do what he's going to do, and I think they're going to be just fine defensively.
Yeah, it's they do live under a bit of a bend don't break. They've gotten a little more aggressive over the last couple of years. They weren't a great run defense last year. That's my words that there'll be a bad run defense without Matt Milano. Because
Right.
even if you like Dorian Williams, you don't think he's a great run defender. And you just worry. But that's where I hope the depth of Austin Johnson and Dwayne Carter can help a little bit. And then
Mhm.
you have again Taron Johnson, who's like the best run defending nickel in the NFL. Um, let's go through new additions and losses. New additions: Mitchell Trubisky, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, Lael Collins, Austin Johnson, Deion Jones, and Mike Edwards. Lost: Kyle Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, Jordan Phillips, Leonard Floyd, Terrell Dodson, Tre'Davious White, Cyril Neal, Dane Jackson, Micah Hyde, and Jordan Poyer. Man,
Oh
did
boy.
they lose a lot of players. Who outside of Stephon Diggs hurts the most to lose?
The one of the safeties, right?
Yeah, I think it's those safeties, Hyde or Poyer, even though they were getting
Yep.
older, and it was maybe smart for it was
Still
time.
good.
They're both still good players. Draft class: Keon Coleman going to be a starter, probably their wide receiver one day one. Cole Bishop, who I just talked about, who I really liked in the second round. Third round: Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle out of Duke. Their RB2, Ray Davis out of Kentucky in the fourth round. Cedric Van Pran in the fifth round. Not going to play this
Oh,
year, but I think is someone who can develop. I hope I get this name right. In the fifth round, linebacker Edefuan Olafishio. Don't know much about him. Javon Solomon, edge out of Troy. Everyone liked that Colorado State edge. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I thought Javon Solomon was better. I thought he was a third round ish player. And then a couple of low linemen and Tylen Grable and Travis Clayton and Daquan Hardy, the corner out of Penn State. Who's your X factor for this team?
my X factor for this team is going to be Matt Collins.
Anything on that?
That's it. Nope, that's it. Because I forgot to think of an X factor before we recorded this.
I'm going to go AJ Epinesa, right? If he can develop as a little more of a full time player, obviously Von Miller's a huge X factor for them. But AJ, if he can develop into a little more of a full time player, then you feel really good about this front four. Like this is just not only is it a passable front four, it's just a really good. You have good Ed and Grigor, so you have one of the best defensive tackles in Ed Oliver. Then you add AJ Epinesa to that group. Over under 10.5 wins for your Buffalo Bills.
I'm going to add on to that lazy point that I had about an X factor because I just had this thought. Where's the superstar on this team, Bobby? Outside of Josh Allen,
On offense,
uh, on offense or defense.
I mean, you have James Cook, who was fourth in rushing last year.
But do you view him as a star yet?
No, I don't.
No, no. So really, we're talking about a team that, like, hey, this is a team that could compete in the AFC. And you look up and down, and you're kind of searching for that star, and you're searching for that, like, who's going to really solidify to themselves. You forget star. That's a high bar, but who can even make themselves like a all pro, like Pro Bowl
I mean, I
player?
think Kincaid
You're
can
kind of,
get into that range here
mm-hmm.
soon. Deion Dawkins is someone who's, I think he's been all pro before at left tackle.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Daquan Jones can do that if you play 16,
yeah,
17
I
games.
mean, Ed Oliver, he's not in that Quentin Williams, Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence range, but he's in the tier below that. Um, and then linebacker and second. You had Matt Milano. Unfortunately, he's out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah. So,
it's, but I don't think they're lacking either though. And then they have the
no.
no. I mean, you could say outside Josh Allen, they have the second best quarterback in the NFL.
Right. No, but I'm even just looking at it from a roster perspective and in terms of an X factor that you want to step up to the plate. I think this roster is kind of not desperate, but this roster is in search of another star to step up to the plate, and who can complement Josh Allen in terms of being a dude on this football team. So there you go. That's another talking point
Yeah,
about
and
an X factor.
they've had the draft at the end of the first round consistently now, because they've been so good. Like I'm trying to think of other teams. Like no one can be the 49ers. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones, who are stars. You know, the Ravens. Who are the stars on the Ravens outside Lamar Jackson?
Kyle Hamilton, Justin Matabuke,
Yeah,
the Roquan Smith.
yeah, you're right. Um, but again, I think they have the second best QB in the NFL. I think they've been coached well for a while. They have Number four running back and rushing in the NFL, and he's a dual threat guy. So I think they're in good hands. Um, Super Bowl is the standard, and Super Bowl is hard to hit, and that's what this team's going to be judged against. But I do believe they're going to get there eventually. I don't know if it's this year, but they're a team that's going to get there eventually. Well, over under 10.5 wins.
I'm going over.
Do
Yep,
you have them winning the
pretty
AFC
confident in that.
East? Because I do.
I do not. I have the New York Jets winning the
All
AFC
right, I
East.
got the over, and I have the Buffalo Bills win the AFC East. That is the Buffalo Bills, and this is football today.